We are breaking down every Power 5 conference schedule in college football for 2014. Next up is Wisconsin. And before we go on to 2014, let's look back at last season and check out the Badgers and how close they came to a really special season in finishing at 9-4. Remember the game at Arizona State? Not allowed to try the last-second field goal. The refs botched it up. That was a debacle. We'll never know if Wisconsin would have made the kick, but it was probably an 80% certainty. Could have left Tempe with a win. That was the first loss of the season. They went to Columbus, took on Ohio State, lost that game by a touchdown against the Buckeyes, one of the top 5 or 10 teams in the country. Really carved up the Ohio State secondary. Bradley Roby, Jared Abbrederis having a field day against the #1 draft pick in that one. Badgers almost upset the Buckeyes again on the road. Then late in the season, actually the last game of the season, inexplicably losing to Penn State at home on Senior Day. And Wisconsin, a huge 21-point favorite in that game, carved up by Christian Hackenberg, lose to Penn State. Then they go to the bowl game, take on South Carolina in the Capital One Bowl, lose to the Gamecocks 34-24. If they would have just had marginal quarterback play in that game, they would have knocked out South Carolina, ranked number 4 to complete the season. South Carolina, one of the best teams in college football, and Wisconsin took them to the wire. We're right there. I know the score was 34-24, but if you watch the game, Wisconsin was right there the entire game, had a third-quarter lead, really ran it down South Carolina's throats. So you're talking about one of the top rush defenses in college football. Clowney, Sutton, and Quarles up front, and Wisconsin took it to them with like 400 yards of rushing in that game. But they lose it. They lose 4 games, but we're very close to winning a Big Ten championship and being higher nationally ranked at the end of the season. All right, let's forget 2013. Let's move on to this fall. And my favorite game of the opening weekend, it's LSU and it's Wisconsin. So the Badgers, long known for playing a bit of a Powerpuff schedule early in the season, schedule Alabama next season. They've got LSU this season. They've got the Tigers again at Lambeau Field in 2 years. So LSU and Wisconsin, as the Badgers, are taking this 4-team college football playoff very seriously and knowing we need to schedule somebody specifically from the SEC, and if we play extremely well or knock them off, then that bodes well for the rest of the season and sets us up for a lot of debate for strength of schedule. So let's look at Wisconsin here. Again, the LSU game, the game that I really want to see on weekend 1 in Houston, Texas. And it's not a matchup game. It's not a game like, okay, these are 2 very differing type teams in regards to matchup play. One's a wide open matchup kind of team. The team that plays in space plays in the spread, and this is a power team. No, these are 2 power teams that go to the play action pass. Very similar teams. I want to see who's stronger, who's more physical, and as always, we always question the Big Ten speed against an SEC opponent. And LSU, year in, year out, has as much speed as anybody in college football. So it's LSU and Wisconsin. And if the Badgers win that one, they're off to the races possibly for an excellent start because they don't play anybody tough till late in the schedule. So after that, before they start Big Ten play, it's 4 straight non-conference before they dive into conference play. Western Illinois, Bowling Green, and South Florida, all at the friendly confines of Camp Randall Stadium. Again, Western Illinois, Bowling Green, and South Florida, a very light schedule after LSU. But similar to the Michigan State schedule, I gave the Spartans a pass. I will do the same for the Badgers for scheduling the 1 elite program. So it's LSU, then the 3 Softies that they should win, although we know the Badgers in recent years, because of their style of play, at times keep inferior opponents close to the vest and in the game late. All right, let's look at the Big Ten schedule for Wisconsin. They take on Northwestern, Illinois, Maryland, Rutgers, and Purdue. That starts the Big Ten slate. Those are all games that they will be heavily favored in. Again, it's at Northwestern. We'll see what the Wildcats have after losing 7 of 8 to close out last season after a promising start at 4-0 after a 10-3 campaign in 2012. Northwestern with Simeon back at quarterback on the road in Evanston. Okay, Illinois, that's a win. If that's not a win, then the Badgers do have much serious issues in 2014. The game against Maryland, interesting game in that Maryland will bring some speed and bring some issues to the forefront for the Badgers, that they'll have to deal with maybe the two speediest receivers in the Big Ten at Maryland. Then you got the game at Rutgers. That very much a game of power versus power, the way the Scarlet Knights have played offensive football in recent years. Then the game at Purdue. The Boilers have been completely pathetic, specifically in 2013 at 1-11, 0-8 in the Big Ten. So that should be 5 consecutive wins. I think the biggest test will be Maryland at home. The Terps coming off a 6-7 campaign and a postseason berth. Then they finish off, Wisconsin does, with 3 fairly tough games at home against Nebraska. So they've got the Huskers where they would like them. At Iowa, the Hawkeyes played the Badgers tough on the road before Wisconsin took that game over 28-9 in the fourth quarter. Then the Badgers finish up with Minnesota. So a fairly tough last 3 games, not excruciating. Those are fringe top 25 programs in Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota to close out, and 2 of those 3 at home. So can Wisconsin go undefeated in the Big Ten? Yes, they could go undefeated in the Big Ten. Will they most likely slip up once? Yes, it could be Nebraska. It could be on the road at Iowa City. That could be a huge game because we previewed Iowa's schedule for 2014. Check that out. And Iowa could be 10-0. Now, will they trip up? Most likely they will, but they will be favored in their first 10 games as well. So Iowa, Wisconsin at Iowa City, the second to last game of the season, will be huge in the Big Ten. And again, for Wisconsin, no Michigan State, no Ohio State, no Penn State, no Michigan. I believe that the Big Ten schedule makers are making issues here. They're making issues for the perception and the ability of the Big Ten to play in this 4-team national playoff at the end of the season. They've got a primary player here in Wisconsin not playing the 4 best teams in the other division. I understand the round robin doesn't work in regards to being able to play everybody tough. You can't have all the tough teams play each other, and you can't predict necessarily who's going to be tough and who's going to be the weaker second-tier division teams. At the same time, Wisconsin not playing Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, or Penn State is not right. The Big Ten scheduling strategy and the system and structure should be changed to mix up the opponents there. That's huge for Wisconsin right there because Nebraska and Iowa being the 2 best teams on the schedule after the opening night against LSU. If the Badgers lose against LSU and then they put a run on in the Big Ten and get down to the last game or 2 undefeated, they will probably still be given no respect at that point, having lost to a team outside the Big Ten and the measuring stick, the SEC, and then running the table against a weak Big Ten schedule, having, again, not played Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, and Ohio State. Wisconsin can't blame you. You don't run the schedule. At the same time, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota to close it out. It's about as tough as it gets for the Badgers in 2014. All right, Wisconsin fans, what do you think about this Big Ten schedule in particular? That's issue number 1, not playing the Big 4 in the other division. Is that going to hurt the Badgers this season? Well, if they win a lot of games, if they go 11-1, or can you imagine 12-0, that could be an issue. And the big one, again, against LSU to start it all off. All right, Wisconsin fans, step up. Would love to hear from you right here on Mark Rogers TV.